1 week before Thanksgiving, in the Whitmore family's gleaming dining room, they whispered I would ruin the holiday, that I should be kept away for peace. Then my billionaire grandfather, Elias Whitmore, slid a check across the table like it was trash. I smiled as I accepted it. It was not about the money. I had recognized the bait. That check was the key to exposing them all right as the turkey was carved. My name is London Jacobson. I am 32 years old, and my profession is the management of complex systems. I am an operations expert at Northline Vector, a logistics firm that moves critical assets across continents. My job is not about organization. It is about forecasting failure. I analyze stress points, bottlenecks, and human error. I am paid to see the structural cracks in a system before they widen, before the entire edifice collapses. It is a discipline that requires patience, meticulous observation, and the complete suppression of immediate emotional reactions. I was back in Harbor Heights, Rhode Island. The town always smelled the same, a sharp, wealthy tang of old money and the underlying decay of salt air. I had returned to the place I avoided, the massive coastal estate of my grandfather, Elias Whitmore, to assist with Thanksgiving. The invitation had come from my stepmother, Marina. Marina was not my mother. My mother, Elias's true daughter, was long gone. Marina had been my father's second wife, and when he also died young, Marina had skillfully anchored herself to the Whitmore legacy. She was now the self-appointed matriarch, the gatekeeper of the family's public image. Her invitations were not requests, they were summonses, written on heavy cream cardstock that felt like a passive-aggressive invoice. The family was already gathering, circling like lazy sharks in the warm waters of my grandfather's fortune. There was Marina, of course, gliding through the hallways in expensive cashmere, her face a mask of stressed hospitality. She managed the house and my grandfather's social calendar with the ruthless efficiency of a corporate raider. There was my half-brother, Dylan, at 24. He was Marina's son from a brief first marriage, and he possessed all of her entitlement but none of her strategic intelligence. He was perpetually in development on a new startup, a series of buzzwords funded by my grandfather's exasperated generosity. There was Aunt Ruth, my grandfather's younger sister. Ruth had never truly worked a day in her life. She lived permanently in the West Wing, her entire identity forged in proximity to Elias's power. She functioned as the family's internal surveillance, the collector and distributor of whispers. And there was Gage, Ruth's son. Gage was a man defined by his high school athletic trophies, which were still polished in his room. He managed a small portion of the family's investments, which meant he had a very large allowance and a title that impressed people at the local yacht club. They all existed in the deep, gravitational pull of Elias Whitmore, a man who had built a real estate empire from nothing and now, in his 80s, watched them feed on it. I was the outlier, the one who had left, the one who worked at a real company, paid my own bills, and saw them not as family, but as a compromised supply chain. I was in the main pantry, cataloging the silver. Marina insisted on using the heirloom set for the holiday, and she assigned me the task of counting every spoon and fork, a job I recognized as a form of containment. It kept me busy and isolated. The kitchen door swung open, just enough. I did not move. I heard Marina's voice, a sharp, controlled whisper, meant to be discreet, but carrying the full weight of her anxiety. She is going to ruin it. Ruth, I can feel it. She will ruin Thanksgiving. Aunt Ruth's reply was a dry rasp, laced with satisfaction. It is always chaos when she returns. She enjoys the drama. Marina, you must keep her away from Elias. Whatever you do not let her near his safe. My hands did not stop moving. 1, 2, 3 salad forks. They were not just whispering, they were planning. They saw my presence not as a reunion, but as an infiltration. I finished the silver, noting the count on a crisp pad. In my line of work, you never react to the first sign of trouble. You observe the inputs. You let the system reveal its weaknesses. They had just shown me their primary fear. my access to my grandfather. The escalation began 2 hours later. I was in the library, ostensibly reading, but actually mapping out the house's sightlines. Marina was in the main hall, her voice low as she spoke on her phone, but the acoustics of the old house were unforgiving. "Yes, a locksmith. Tonight," she murmured. "After 9 p.m. should be fine. Everyone will be at dinner. Yes, the guest room in the east wing, the one facing the water. My room. Just a simple replacement," she continued. "An upgrade. For security, Elias has been worried." She was lying. Elias was not worried. Marina was controlling access. She was building a cage, either to lock me in or lock me out. I noted the time. My phone vibrated on the table, a notification from the family group chat. I only kept it active to track their movements. It was a message from Aunt Ruth, clearly sent to the group by mistake, or perhaps in a calculated, deniable act of aggression intended for me to see. Just let her expose her own lies. She cannot help herself. She is desperate, desperate. The word hung in the air. I looked at my functional, clean, financially independent life. Then I looked at them, tied to the whims of an old man, their collective futures dependent on his signature. The projection was breathtaking. The trap, however, needed bait. They provided it just before the pre-dinner cocktails. A small, theatrical shriek echoed from the dining room, where Marina was inspecting the table settings. "It is gone." We all convened. Dylan, Gage, and Ruth arrived, feigning concern. "The 1982 Chateau Margaux," Marina announced, one hand pressed to her chest. Her voice was trembling, but her eyes were dry and bright. "It has vanished. From the cellar." The collective gaze of the room, as if rehearsed, swiveled and landed directly on me. "That was for the Thanksgiving toast," Marina whispered, her voice breaking beautifully. "It was Elias's favorite. He was saving it." Gage whistled, low and appreciative of the drama. "That is a 5-figure bottle, is it not, Aunt Marina?" "Easily," she replied, dabbing at a tear that was not there. "We were just in the cellar this morning, and now?" The implication was clear. The outsider, the desperate one, the one who did not belong. They were painting me as a common, impulsive thief. I said nothing. I walked past them, into the cellar passageway. I looked at the rack. The bottle was gone, but the slot it occupied was wrong. There was a clean rectangle in the thick dust, too precise. The bottle had not been grabbed. It had been lifted carefully. Recently, it was a plant. This was the second stage of their operation. Discredit me with a petty crime. Prove I was unstable and untrustworthy. It was sloppy, predictable, and beneath them. "This amateur theater is exhausting. Marina," the voice cut through the tension like a razor. We all turned. Elias Whitmore stood in the doorway, leaning on his heavy ebony cane. He moved slowly now, his body finally bowing to his age, but his eyes were as sharp and clear as they had been 30 years ago. They were the eyes of a builder, a man who saw foundations and load-bearing walls, and he saw right through this. "The Margaux is not gone," Elias said, his voice quiet but filling the entire space. "I moved it this morning. I tired of looking at it, and I certainly did not want to waste it on this particular crowd." Marina's face went white. Aunt Ruth began to stammer. "Elias, we were just so worried. With strangers in the house?" "The only stranger here, Ruth, is honesty," he said. He did not raise his voice. He did not need to. He tapped his cane once on the marble floor. "Everyone, the drawing room. Now." We followed like schoolchildren. Dylan, suddenly silent, pocketed his phone. Gage stared at his shoes. We sat. The fire was roaring in the hearth, but the room felt arctic. Elias took his customary high-backed chair, placing his cane deliberately beside him. He looked at each of them, one by one. Marina, picking at an invisible thread on her sleeve. Ruth, attempting a look of pious concern. Dylan, already bored and restless. "We gather for a holiday of gratitude," Elias said, his voice a low rumble. But this year, I find myself less interested in gratitude and more concerned with integrity, or the lack of it. He reached into the inner pocket of his heavy cashmere jacket. He did not retrieve a wallet. He retrieved a thick, corporate checkbook. It was not from his personal account. I recognized the embossed seal of Whitmore Family Holdings. He uncapped a heavy, dark fountain pen. The only sound in the suffocating silence was the scratch of the nib on the heavy paper as he began to write. He wrote my name, London Jacobson. He wrote the amount. My eyes tracked the fluid motion of his hand. $1 million. He signed it with his sharp, definitive signature. He tore the check from the book with a clean, terrifying rip. Marina stopped breathing. I could see Dylan across the room. His pupils dilated. His entire body suddenly rigid with attention. Gage was leaning forward, his mouth slightly open. Elias looked past them all. His gaze settled only on me. I have a small experiment, he said, the words precise. A test, before Thanksgiving. He leaned forward, the check held between two fingers. He placed it on the polished mahogany coffee table that separated us. Then, with a single, deliberate push, he slid it across the wood. The paper whispered over the varnish, spinning once before coming to a perfect stop, right in front of me. The family stared at the check. They stared at it as if it were a loaded gun. London, my grandfather said, his eyes holding mine, ignoring the frantic energy of the others. I want you to hold this for me. Keep it safe, just until tomorrow night, after the dinner is served. It was not a gift. It was a deployment. The whispers, the locksmith, the pathetic performance with the wine. That was their clumsy plan. This was his. He was not testing my loyalty. He was testing their restraint. He had just dropped a kilo of raw meat into the cage, and I was the one tasked with holding it while the animals starved. I looked down at the pale blue paper, at the 7 figures written in my grandfather's hand, and I knew this holiday was not about gratitude. It was about diagnostics. The system was about to show us all its failure points. I picked up the check. The paper felt heavy, crisp, expensive. In the drawing room, the silence was a vacuum. Marina, Dylan, Ruth, and Gage stared at the small rectangle in my hand as if I were holding a live grenade. My grandfather, Elias, simply watched me, his expression unreadable, waiting to see how I would handle the asset. My training took over. This was no longer a family gathering. It was a high-stakes logistics scenario. The asset, $1 million in a negotiable instrument, was volatile, compromised, and now my responsibility. I did not go immediately to my room. That would signal weakness, a need to hide. Instead, I walked calmly to the study, my footsteps echoing on the hardwood. I knew Marina had scheduled a locksmith for 9 p.m. It was currently 7:35 p.m. I had exactly 1 hour and 25 minutes before they attempted to physically secure my location. My first priority was not hiding the check. It was analyzing the threat vector. I closed the heavy oak door of the study and turned on the green banker's lamp on the desk. Under the focused light, the check was not just a check. My grandfather was a builder, a man of systems and structures. He would not initiate a test this chaotic without embedded controls. I angled the check under the light. My eyes scanned the microprint line, the watermark, the paper stock, and there it was. In the bottom right corner, almost invisible to the naked eye, was a microscopic watermark, pressed into the fiber of the paper. It was not the bank's logo, it was the Whitmore crest, and beneath it, 3 words, Whitmore Family Holdings, escrow trigger. A cold clarity settled over me. This was not a real, cashable check. It was a diagnostic tool. An escrow trigger is a specific financial instrument used in hostile acquisitions or internal audits. It is a honeypot. It appears valuable, but the moment its routing number is scanned by an unauthorized party, it does not transfer funds. It triggers an immediate, silent alert, flagging the account, the time, and the location of the attempted scan. My grandfather had not given me $1 million. He had given me a customized tracking device, and he had just announced its presence to a room full of people he did not trust. My next move was verification. I pulled out my secure work phone, the one I used for Northline Vector, bypassing the estate's compromised Wi-Fi and using my own encrypted data plan. I did not call the generic number on the check. I called the private cellular number of Mr. Atherton, the branch president of Harbor Mutual, the bank that had managed the Whitmore assets for 40 years. He answered on the second ring. "Ms. Jacobson," he said. His voice was all business. He knew who I was. "Mr. Atherton, I am calling to verify handling protocols for a specific instrument issued by Whitmore Family Holdings. I am in possession of an escrow trigger check, serial number ending in 4490. There was a pause. I heard the quiet tapping of keys. "Yes," he said, his voice tightening slightly. "That instrument is live. It is currently under a passive monitoring protocol. We received the activation order from Mr. Whitmore this afternoon." "Understood," I said. "So any attempt at unauthorized digital capture, a scanner, a mobile deposit app, will activate the protocol?" "Immediately," Atherton confirmed. "It will lock the associated holding account and log the device ID that attempted the scan. Ms. Jacobson, the instructions on this file are very specific. The instrument is not to be deposited. It is to be held, as is. We are merely the monitoring station. Is that clear?" "Crystal," I said. "Thank you for the clarification." I hung up. So, the trap was officially set. My job was not just to protect the check, it was to document the exact moment the rest of the family tried to steal it. Chain of custody, that was everything. I needed to prove that I had secured the asset and that any subsequent breach was not my error. I retrieved my portable operations kit from my luggage. It looked like a simple hard-case briefcase, but it contained my field equipment. I opened it and took out a small, tungsten-lined document safe, barely larger than a book. It was sealed not with a key, but with a unique, single-use triangular polymer seal. I also took out a microcamera. I placed the camera on the bookshelf. Aimed directly at the desk, I hit record, speaking clearly to the empty room. I began the procedure. Time is 1947, November 21st. I am London Jacobson, securing asset serial number 4490. I held the check up to the camera, front and back. I placed it inside the tungsten box. I took the blue triangular seal and threaded it through the locking mechanism. I pressed it shut. The seal snapped into place with a definitive click. It was now physically impossible to open the box without visibly destroying the seal. I filmed the sealed box, zooming in on the unique serial number of the seal itself. Then, I stopped the recording. The asset was physically secure. Now, I needed to secure the evidence. I needed witnesses. I could not let them claim I had faked the video or sealed an empty box. I left the study, carrying the sealed box. I went to the kitchen. Marta, the family's longtime housekeeper, was there, nervously polishing silver that was already clean. She was a good woman, trapped in this toxic environment. "Marta," I said gently. She jumped. "I need you to witness something for me. It will only take a moment." "Ms. London, I do not want any trouble. Marina." "This is not trouble. Marta, this is procedure. Just your signature." I led her to the main foyer. As we entered, the front door opened. It was Mr. Quinn, our neighbor, a retired probate judge who lived 2 estates down. He was holding a leather-bound book. "Elias left this at the club," Mr. Quinn said, holding it out. "Thank you, Judge Quinn," I said, taking the book. "In fact, your timing is perfect. Would you also be willing to witness a signature?" He raised an eyebrow. "Witness what, young lady?" I placed the small, sealed safe on the foyer table. I took out my phone and took a high-resolution photograph of the box, capturing the triangular seal and its serial number clearly. "I am taking temporary possession of a family document," I explained, choosing my words with care. "I have sealed it in this tamper-evident container. I just need 2 signatures verifying the date and time that the seal was intact in my possession." I brought up a new document on my phone. I typed, "We, the undersigned, verify that on November 21st, at 7:53 p.m., we observed the integrity of triangular seal, serial number 71 Delta, on a secure container held by London Jacobson." Marta looked terrified, but she signed her name on the screen. Judge Quinn looked at me, then at the box, then back at me. A small, almost imperceptible smile touched his lips. He understood procedure. He signed his name below Marta's. "Thank you both," I said. "That is all." Marta hurried back to the kitchen. Judge Quinn handed me the book for Elias. "Be careful, London," he murmured, too low for anyone else to hear. "The acoustics in this house were designed for drama." "I know, sir. I am an operations expert." He nodded. "So you are." I now had a digital, time-stamped, and witness chain of custody. Next, I needed to inform our legal counsel. I went back to the study, locked the door, and uploaded the video file, the photograph of the seal, and the witness-signed document to Northline Vector's secure cloud server, hosted offshore. I then logged into the secure portal for the Whitmore Estates law firm. I sent a message to Attorney Langford, the man who managed my grandfather's entire trust. The message was simple. "Attorney Langford, Asset 4490, received from EWW at 1930. Asset is an escrow trigger. Asset is now physically secured in container 71D. Chain of custody documented and witnessed by M. Costa and J. Quinn, awaiting further instruction." I attached a watermarked, low-resolution scan of the check. It was just clear enough to be legible, but my own digital watermark was layered over it, different from the pixel fingerprint I was preparing for the family. This scan was for our legal records only. I placed the physical safe back into my briefcase and locked the briefcase. I sat down at the desk and waited. I had neutralized the threat of the locksmith. It did not matter if Marina changed the lock on my room. As the asset was now mobile and secured, I had established a legal and physical chain of custody. The next move was theirs. It came at 8:41 p.m. An email notification pinged on my laptop. It was not from anyone in the family. The sender was J. Barrows, with an email address from a generic public server. The subject line read, "Urgent. Whitmore Holdings. Thanksgiving distribution query." I opened it. The message was polite, filled with corporate jargon, and completely fraudulent. "Dear Ms. Jacobson, I am reaching out from the Auxiliary Accounting Office for Whitmore Family Holdings. We are processing the preliminary distributions for the Thanksgiving bonuses and need to verify the high-value instrument Mr. Whitmore issued to you this evening. Our system requires a clear, high-resolution scan of the check, showing all four corners, to allocate the funds correctly against the proper trust account before the holiday freeze. Please reply with the scanned image at your earliest convenience to avoid a processing delay. Sincerely, John Barrows, Auditing." It was clumsy. So clumsy. My grandfather's real accounting team was a fortress. They would never use a public email server, and they would certainly never ask for a scan of $1 million check. This was Marina, or perhaps Dylan, trying to be clever. They wanted a digital copy. They wanted to see if they could scan it, cash it, or use the numbers to probe the account. They had taken the bait. I smiled. My job was not to deny them. It was to let them prove who they were. I opened my image editing software. I took the clean, high-resolution photo I had taken of the check before sealing it. Then, I began my real work. I embedded a unique pixel fingerprint across the entire image. It was a form of digital steganography, invisible to the naked eye. It was a pattern of single-pixel color variations, meaningless unless you knew the key. If this image was ever opened on a new device, if it was uploaded, or even screenshotted, that digital fingerprint would embed itself in the new file. It was my own personal tracer tag. I saved the new file. This was my bait image. I replied to John Barrows, Mr. Barrows. "Thank you for reaching out." Attached. "Please find the requested image for your records. Please confirm receipt. London Jacobson." I hit send. I watched the sent notification flash. The trap was now multi-layered. They had the physical asset, secured by a seal they would have to break, and now they had the digital asset, tagged with my own invisible ink. My secure phone vibrated on the desk. A new message from Attorney Langford. It was one sentence. Do not send them the real file. Let them commit. I looked at the email I had just sent. Done, I whispered to the empty room. The system is live. The locksmith arrived at exactly 9 p.m., just as Marina had scheduled. I watched from the landing as he worked on my bedroom door. He was quick, professional, and completely unaware that he was a pawn in a domestic Cold War. Marina stood nearby, directing him with a strained graciousness, explaining it was a necessary security upgrade. The lock he installed was a new, high-security deadbolt, a key, I noted, that she would have and I would not. It was a symbolic and practical gesture of containment. It did not matter. My briefcase, containing the sealed, witnessed, and digitally tracked asset, was already downstairs with me. We were summoned to the small dining room for what Marina called the pre-holiday tasting dinner. This was a tradition she had invented, a dress rehearsal for the main event where she could test the menu and terrorize the staff. Tonight, it was an arena. I took my seat, placing my briefcase firmly on the floor by my feet, my ankle resting against it. The family filed in, their eyes darting between me, my grandfather, and the briefcase. The $1 million check was a ghost at the table, a 13th guest. Marina, at the head of the table, forced a hostess's smile. The first course, a butternut squash soup, was served. Well, London, Marina began, her voice a thin veneer of politeness over pure acid. You seem quiet this evening. I suppose holding $1 million makes a person forget the simple pleasantries. So much to think about, I am sure. So much responsibility. Her attack was direct, intended to paint me as uncouth, already corrupted by the money. Before I could answer, Dylan piped up, blissfully unaware of the true voltage in the room. He was too consumed by his own reflection. Speaking of responsibility and big money, he announced, puffing out his chest. Reef Now just cleared its second-round seed funding. We are moving into the beta phase, Aunt Ruth cooed appropriately. Oh, Dylan, that is wonderful. What is it again? Something with the ocean? It is a paradigm shift in coastal erosion management. Aunt Ruth, he said, using words he had clearly memorized. We are leveraging proprietary AI to map coral degradation and link private conservation donors directly to at-risk reefs. It is the future. We are basically saving the planet. I remained silent, sipping my soup. I knew Reef Now was a website he had paid a firm in India to build. I also knew his seed funding was not from venture capitalists. It was a check Elias had signed 3 months ago out of sheer exhaustion. It sounds very impressive, Gage said, humoring him. Hard to get that kind of capital in this market? Not when you have a truly disruptive idea, Dylan said, oblivious. Investors can see the potential. My grandfather, Elias, said nothing. He simply ate his soup, his gaze flat. He knew exactly where the money had come to invest in this disruptive idea. Aunt Ruth, seeing the conversation veering into Dylan's fantasy, yanked it back to the blood sport she preferred. She put down her spoon and adopted a look of profound, theatrical sadness. I just cannot get my mind off it, she sighed, shaking her head. That beautiful bottle of wine, the 1982 Chateau Margaux. She turned her watery eyes toward me. It just vanishes. Right before the holiday, I keep thinking, who would do such a thing? Who would steal from Elias? It must be someone. Desperate. The word hung in the air. The same word she had used in her text message. The accusation was no longer implied. It was served. Marina, Dylan, and Gage all stared at me. I placed my own spoon down, carefully, on the edge of the plate. I did not look at Ruth. I looked directly at Marina. A 5-figure asset is missing from the premises, I stated. My voice was calm, devoid of emotion. It was the voice I used for post-incident reports. Have you filed the insurance claim? The table went perfectly still. Marina, who had been wearing a mask of concern, froze. Her expression faltered. "What?" she stammered. "The insurance," I repeated. "The household policy, that bottle, if valued at 5 figures, is certainly a scheduled item. To make a claim, you will need to file a police report. Have you called the Harbor Heights Police to report the theft?" Ruth's mouth opened and closed. This was not in her script. "Well, no," Marina said, flustered. "It is a family matter. We do not involve the police." "So it is not a theft," I clarified. "It is a family dispute over a misplaced item. In that case, the insurance company would call your claim fraudulent." I paused, then added, "Filing a false police report and insurance fraud are serious offenses. I am sure you are aware." I had not defended myself. I had not denied the accusation. I had simply presented them with the legal consequences of their own lie. I had pushed the operational pressure right back onto them. Ruth looked like she had swallowed a stone. Marina's face was pale with rage. I glanced at my grandfather. He was not looking at me. His eyes were fixed on Marina and Ruth, a flicker of cold assessment in them. He was watching the system fail. He was watching how they reacted not to my defense, but to the introduction of external consequences. Gage, sensing his mother and aunt had lost control, tried a different tactic. He shifted into the role of the helpful, responsible nephew. "London," he said, his voice oozing false concern. "This is all just stress. But Marina has a point about responsibility. That check, $1 million. It is a lot for you to handle on your own." He leaned forward, trying to appear brotherly. "My safe is bolted to the foundation. It is twice the size of the one in the study. Why do you not let me lock that check up for you tonight? Just to be safe, I can keep it for you until tomorrow." The direct play, the attempt to physically take possession. "Thank you, Gage," I said, "but my security protocols are sufficient." "Do not be foolish," Marina snapped, her composure gone. She dropped the pretense of politeness. "This is not a game. London, that is family money. It belongs in the family account where it is safe. We will transfer it tonight." "It is not going anywhere," I said, my voice hardening. "It is not family money, Marina. It is a specific asset, issued from the holdings account, and entrusted to me, personally, by Elias. It cannot be legally commingled with a shared account, nor can custody be transferred to a third party like Gage, without explicit notarized authorization from the issuer." I turned my head slightly to look at my grandfather. "Is that not correct, grandfather?" Elias had been watching this volley with the detached interest of a scientist. "Your protocols are sound." "London," he said. It was the first time he had spoken. The air in the room was now so thick it was hard to breathe. They had all tried. The insinuation, the direct accusation, the offer of help, the outright demand, and I had blocked them all, not with emotion, but with procedure, law, and logic. They had exposed their greed from every possible angle. My grandfather picked up his ebony cane from where it rested on his chair. He tapped it, once, on the thick Persian rug. The sound was a dull, final thud. "The tasting is over," he announced, his voice quiet but absolute. He pushed his chair back and rose slowly, looking at the stunned, angry faces of his family, Marina, Ruth, Dylan, Gage. "Tomorrow," he said, his voice a low growl. "We will have our test of trust. Tonight," he looked at each of them, his eyes sharp and unforgiving. "Tonight, you will all sleep on the choices you have just revealed. Sleep well, if you can." He turned and walked out of the room, leaving me alone at the table with the wolves. The silence in the house after the dinner was a living thing. It was heavy, accusatory, and thick with anticipation. Marina had been forced, by my grandfather's pointed stare, to hand over the new, heavy brass key to my bedroom. Her fingers were cold as they brushed mine, her eyes promising a reckoning. I locked the door, the new, heavy deadbolt that she had installed to lock me out. It was 10:13 p.m. The containment field was now mine. My first move was to secure the asset against tampering. I retrieved my briefcase and opened it. The bank-issued, tamper-evident envelope lay inside. The seal was intact, just as the witnesses had signed off on. But I was adding my own security. From my operations kit, I removed a pen-shaped applicator. It was loaded with a customized, invisible ultraviolet ink. I carefully, meticulously, traced the entire seam of the envelope flap. The solution was alcohol-based, drying instantly, leaving no trace, no smell. Under normal light, it was invisible, but under the specific frequency of the UV torch attached to my keyring, it would glow a vivid, unmistakable cobalt blue. If the envelope was steamed, the ink would run. If the glue was peeled, the invisible line would crack. It was now sealed by me. My second move was to secure the perimeter. I did not trust the new lock. It was Marina's lock. I trusted my own systems. I took a 2-piece magnetic contact switch from my kit. The pieces were no larger than an aspirin tablet, painted a dark mahogany to match the antique door frame. I affixed one piece to the frame and its counterpart to the door itself. They were perfectly aligned, silent, and wireless. I synced the sensor to my smartwatch via a secure, encrypted channel. If the door opened, breaking the magnetic contact, my watch would not beep. It would simply log the time of the breach and vibrate once, silently, against my wrist. Third, the data. I turned to my laptop. The video file of the witnessed sealing procedure, the signed digital document from Marta and Judge Quinn, the low-resolution scan I had sent to Langford, all of it, I triple-checked that the backup was complete, fully uploaded to my private partition on the Northline vector cloud. I moved the entire bundle into a new directory. I named the folder Recipe Cards. It was a digital needle in a haystack of corporate data. They would never find it. Fourth, the physical plant. The briefcase was too obvious. It was the first thing they would look for. I needed to separate the asset from the expected container. I opened my closet. I pushed past my suits and found the one thing that did not belong, a heavy wool trench coat from my life back north. It was thick, overlarge, and completely unnecessary in this climate-controlled house. I slid the sealed, UV-marked envelope into the deep inner breast pocket. Then, I took a needle and a spool of dark gray thread. I sewed a single, loose stitch across the top of the pocket opening. It was not meant to seal the pocket. It was a trap stitch, a simple, physical tripwire. Anyone jamming their hand into the pocket, searching quickly, would snap that single thread. The break would be my proof of a physical search. I hung the coat back up, burying it behind a row of other clothes. Finally, the bait, the honeypot. I could not just hide the asset. I had to give them something to find. They were hunting. If they hunted and found nothing, they might become desperate, unpredictable. I needed to control their discovery. I took out my small, portable thermal printer. I connected it to my phone and printed the bait image, the high-resolution, pixel-fingerprinted scan of the check I had emailed to John Barrows. I folded it neatly. I slid it into a plain white business envelope, similar in size to the bank envelope, but lacking any seals. This was the decoy. I looked around the room. I could not leave it in the open. That was too easy. It had to feel like a discovery. I slid the decoy envelope under a stack of my Northline Vector Logistics reports on the desk. I pushed it until only the barest fraction of the white corner was visible. It looked like a mistake. It looked like I had tried to hide it quickly, and failed. It was an invitation. I had done everything I could. I had layered physical, digital, and chemical security. I had backed up the evidence. I had set the bait. I turned off all the lights in the room except for the small, green-shaded banker's lamp on the desk. I walked to the high-backed armchair in the far corner, the one deepest in shadow. I sat down, and I waited. The house was still. The grandfather clock in the hall chimed midnight. Then 1 a.m. At 1:12 a.m., my wrist vibrated. One single, silent buzz. I looked at the watch face. The display was stark. Log, 01-12-14. Contact sensor 01. Open. My heart did not pound. My training took over. I became perfectly still, regulating my breathing. I was just another shadow in the room. I heard the door open. It did not make a sound. They were not breaking in. They were using a key, Marina's key. The door closed, just as silently. Log 01-12-29. Contact sensor 01. Closed. Someone was in the room with me. I listened. A whisper of expensive fabric, the faint click of a heel on the hardwood floor just beyond the edge of the rug, and then the smell. It rolled across the room, heavy and cloying. Jasmine, Marina's signature perfume. She was moving slowly. I heard her pause near my luggage. A zipper. She was checking my briefcase, finding it empty. Then, the sound of her moving toward the desk. The whisper of papers being lifted. A pause. A very soft, almost inaudible sound of satisfaction. She had found the decoy. She had found the corner of the envelope. I heard her move again, this time toward the closet. The slide of hangers, fabric moving. She was checking my suit pockets, my jacket pockets. She was thorough, but she was looking for a wallet, a purse, or the briefcase she had already found empty. She would not check the inner lining of a heavy wool winter coat. She stopped. She must have felt she had what she came for. She moved back to the door. Log 01-14-03. Contact sensor 01. Open. Log 01-14-19. Contact sensor 01. Closed. She was gone. She had the bait. I waited. This was only phase 1. Marina was the muscle, the acquisition. She would not know what to do with the scan. She needed the tech specialist. My watch remained still. 1:15 a.m., 1:16 a.m. It vibrated again. Log 01-16-48. Contact sensor 01. Open. A second breach. This time, the sound was different. The rubber sole of a sneaker on the carpet. A faster, more nervous energy. My micro camera. The one I had left on the bookshelf pointing toward the desk was still running on its battery. It did not capture the door, but it captured the person who passed in front of the desk lamp. The silhouette was unmistakable. Tall, lanky, bad posture. Dylan. He was carrying a small, dark rectangular object, a portable scanner. He went straight to the desk. I heard him shuffling the papers. He was looking for the envelope Marina had just taken. I heard him whisper a curse. He was confused. He had been sent to scan the check, but Marina had already taken it. He did a frantic search of the desk drawers. He opened my laptop bag. He was looking for the physical check. He, too, missed the closet. He was the digital man. He had no interest in the physical search. He gave up. He must have assumed Marina had the document, and he was supposed to meet her. Log 01-17-51. Contact sensor 01. Open. Log 01-18-02. Contact sensor 01. Closed. He was gone. Now the trap was fully armed. Somewhere else in the dark house, Marina and Dylan were together. She had the decoy envelope. He had the scanner. They thought they had outsmarted me. They thought they were about to digitally capture $1 million. I watched the illuminated hands of my watch. 1:19 a.m., 1:20 a.m., at 1:22 a.m., my secure work phone, sitting dark in my lap, lit up. It was not a call. It was a high-priority push notification from the Harbor Mutual Secure portal. I opened it. Flag. Escrow trigger activated. Time 01:21:44. Est. Event. Unauthorized digital scan attempt. Instrument. SN 449do. Notes. Scan attempt matches pixel fingerprinted bait image, LJ file 001. Watermark mismatch confirmed. Unauthorized device ID captured. Asset integrity. Physical, not compromised. Monitoring active. They had done it. They had scanned the bait. The bank's system had instantly recognized my unique pixel fingerprint. It had cross-referenced it with the real check's watermark, found a mismatch, and flagged the transaction as hostile. The trap had snapped shut. I was about to stand up, but my phone lit up again. It was 4 minutes later, a second alert. This one from the automated clearinghouse system. Flag. ACH transfer attempt. Amount, $25,000. From Whitmore Holdings. Escrow 4490 to Reef Now LLC. Bank ID 772. Status, failed. Account locked by trigger 012144. My breath caught. Oh, Dylan. He was not just scanning it for the data. He was stupid. He was impulsive. He had immediately used the scanned routing and account numbers to try and authorize a test transfer. He had tried to commit wire fraud, funneling $25,000 directly from the escrow account into his sham Reef Now startup. He had not just stolen the bait, he had eaten it, and the hook, and the line. I sat in the darkness, the glow of the phone illuminating my face. I had the timeline. I had the 2 time-stamped door breaches. I had the sensory witness of Marina's perfume. I had the camera footage of Dylan's silhouette and his scanner. I had the bank's digital log of the unauthorized scan. And now, I had the electronic proof of attempted wire fraud. I opened my laptop. I compiled the logs from my watch. I downloaded the snapshot from the microcamera. I screen captured the 2 bank alerts. I bundled them into a single, encrypted file, stamped with the current time. I sent one final simple message to Attorney Langford. Langford, trigger activated at 0121 EST. Physical asset 71D remains secure with me. Decoy image, L001, was physically stolen from my room at 0114 by Party M. A second party, Party D, entered at 0116. Scan attempt logged by Harbor Mutual, followed by a failed wire transfer attempt of $25K to Reef, Now LLC at 122. I have the full data package. They took the bait. I closed the laptop. The game was over. All that was left was the execution. The sun rose over Harbor Heights, painting the water in shades of cold gray and pale gold. It was Thanksgiving morning. I had not slept. I had sat in the armchair, a silent guardian, until the first light hit the windows. I had watched my watch log as the contact sensor on my door remained blessedly, finally, closed. At 6:30 a.m., my work phone buzzed. It was not a bank alert. It was a secure message from Attorney Langford. Good morning, Ms. Jacobson. I trust the asset is secure. Intact. Seal 71D unbroken. The bait, however, was fully consumed. I typed back, sending him the compiled data package. His reply came 3 minutes later. It was the first pillar of the entire structure my grandfather had built. Then the codicil is active. I am informing you as a matter of procedure. Mr. Whitmore executed a 5th codicil to his will 2 months ago. It established a fiduciary integrity test. This test was to be initiated at his discretion, using a specific, non-negotiable financial instrument, the check you hold. The codicil states, and I quote, "Any beneficiary who attempts to improperly access, convert, or otherwise tamper with the test instrument shall be deemed to have failed the test, and their claim on the principal of the Whitmore Family Trust is hereby and irrevocably forfeit." I read the message twice. This was not just a trap to catch a thief. It was a legally binding execution clause. My grandfather was not just testing their morals. He was holding a formal, binding hearing, and they did not even know they were on trial. The check was not a prize. It was a guillotine. A second message from Langford followed. Reveal 2, as your grandfather calls it. You should also be aware that Mr. Whitmore filed a change of trustee for the primary fund. The previous trustee, Marina, was placed on conditional status. The activation of the fiduciary integrity test, coupled with documented proof of internal malfeasance or attempted embezzlement, triggers her immediate removal. The position of successor trustee is, as of this moment, vacant, pending Mr. Whitmore's final signature. He was not just disinheriting them, he was defenestrating them. He was stripping Marina of the one thing she loved more than the money itself, her control over it, I replied. Understood. What about the scan? We have the bank log. But can we trace it definitively to them? Langford's response was almost cheerful. Reveal 3. That is the beauty of the bait image you created. Your pixel fingerprint is not just a tracer, it is a key. The digital signature it left on the scanning device is unique. When Harbor Mutual's system logged the scan, it captured the device ID. That ID belongs to a Marina Scan Pro, a high-end portable document scanner purchased 3 weeks ago. But your fingerprint also tagged the device that opened the email file. That device ID resolves to an iPad Pro registered to Marina Whitmore. She did not just take the bait, she signed for it. They were trapped digitally, legally, and financially. But the desperate do not stop digging just because the hole is deep. They dig faster. At 8:15 a.m., as the house began to stir with the smells of roasting turkey and false civility, my laptop pinged. Langford had forwarded me a new email. It was a carbon copy of a claim filed by Marina. To whom it may concern. Her email read, addressed to the family's high-value asset insurer. I am writing to file a claim for the theft of a scheduled item, a bottle of 1982 Chateau Margaux, valued at $18,000, was stolen from our wine cellar last night, November 21st. Please begin the claim process immediately, as we require replacement. I stared at the screen. She was not just careless, she was arrogant. She had not filed a police report. She had not waited the standard 24 hours. She had filed the claim first thing in the morning, trying to get the money before anyone could stop her. She was trying to monetize her own lie. She is sloppy, I messaged Langford. She is predictable, he replied. They always are when they think they are winning. Wait. We did not have to wait long. At 9:02 a.m., the insurance company's automated fraud detection system, clearly more efficient than Marina, replied. Langford forwarded this, too. Dear Mrs. Whitmore, thank you for your claim. Our system has flagged this request. We show that the item in question, Chateau Margaux, 1982, serial number 45B882, was purchased by you, via the Whitmore household account, from a different vendor in Boston just 6 days ago. As your policy covers one bottle, and our records show you have just acquired one, this claim for a lost bottle is denied pending an investigation into fraudulent activity. A hold has been placed on your account. Please expect a call from our senior investigator. They had not even bothered to steal a real bottle. They had stolen the one Elias had already replaced, and Marina had used the household account to buy a new one, creating a perfect, damning paper trail. At the same moment, the wolves in the house began to realize the trap was closing. My phone buzzed with another bank alert. This one was not an attempt. It was a reversal failure. Transfer reversal initiated. Amount, $25,000, from ReefNow LLC to Whitmore Holdings. Status, failed. Reason, originating account, ReefNow LLC, insufficient funds. Target account, Whitmore Holdings, locked by security protocol. Dylan, he must have woken up, seen the locked account, panicked, and tried to send the $25,000 back, but he could not. The bank had already locked the Whitmore escrow, and worse, his own ReefNow account did not even have $25,000 in it to send back. He had likely already spent the seed money Elias gave him. He was trying to reverse a fraudulent transfer with non-existent funds. He was trapped in his own pathetic, circular logic. The house was waking up, and the animals were restless. My phone lit up with a notification from the family group chat. It was Gage. Big day. Just confirming the quarterly trust disbursement. Everyone head to the study after the toast tonight, and we will sign the usual paperwork. Marina, did you confirm the wire transfers? We should all be seeing the funds hit by midnight, as usual. He was utterly, blissfully ignorant. He was not in on the scan. He was not in on the wine. He was just a parasite, floating along, waiting for his scheduled feeding. He had no idea the host was about to die. As I read his message, a private text came through. It was from Elias. They are clumsy, he wrote. They are exposed, I replied. Dylan is trying to reverse the wire. Marina just committed insurance fraud. His reply was instant and cold as steel. Do not stop them. Do not warn them. Let them continue. I want their hands and their signatures on every piece of paper that damns them. Let their own actions do the talking. I will see you at dinner. He was not just setting a trap. He was allowing them every opportunity to hang themselves with their own rope. He wanted the evidence to be so overwhelming, so absolute, that there could be no argument, no plea for mercy. I messaged Langford. Elias wants them to fully commit. What is our status? I am drafting the conditional letters of disqualification now, he replied. They will be prepared for Mr. Whitmore's signature this evening. They detail every breach, from the codicil violation to the attempted wire fraud and the insurance claim. He is creating an ironclad legal barrier. They will have no recourse. I stood up and walked to the small printer on the desk. I connected my laptop. My job was to consolidate the data, to take all the digital fragments and forge them into a single, physical weapon. I began to print. First, the timeline. 1930, EWW, issues test asset 4490 to L, J, 2105, M, W, installs new lock on L, J's room, 0114, M, WW, breaches room, log, 011403, steals decoy scan, 0116, D, J, breaches room, log, 011648, with portable scanner, 0121, unauthorized scan of decoy image, EJ01, logged by Harbor Mutual, device ID, Marina Scan Pro, show 122, failed wire transfer of 25,000 from escrow to Reef, now LLC, 0815, M, W, files fraudulent insurance claim for wine, 0902, insurance claim denied, fraud investigation opened, 0903, D, J, attempts to reverse transfer, fails due to insufficient funds. I printed the bank log of the scan. I printed the log of the failed wire transfer. I printed the email from Marina to the insurance company. I printed the insurance company's scathing reply. I printed the snapshot from the micro camera, showing Dylan's silhouette in the lamplight. I stacked the papers into a neat, cold pile. It was a complete operations report. It was an obituary for their inheritance. I slid the entire package into a simple manila folder, the real check, in its sealed, UV-marked, and witnessed envelope, was still in the inner pocket of my winter coat, untouched. I placed the manila folder in my briefcase, alongside the sealed tungsten box. I was ready. The feast was hours away, and I was bringing the charges. The air in the Whitmore estate was thin, sharp, and pressurized. By 4 p.m., Thanksgiving Day, the house was a stage set for a high-society drama, gleaming with lethal precision. The floral arrangements were massive, exploding in cream and gold. The catering staff, dressed in severe black and white, moved with the silent, coordinated efficiency of a military unit. They had all been briefed. They knew the timings, the placements, the personalities. They also knew, from the electric tension radiating from Marina, that this was not a normal holiday. This was an operation. I saw Marina, a general in a silk dress, giving her final orders in the service pantry. Her voice was clipped, high-strung, her face flushed with a mixture of sleeplessness and victory. She did not know that the scan she had stolen was the trigger, that the wire transfer Dylan had attempted was the bullet, and that the bank's logs were the prosecution's entire case. She thought she had won. The toast will be at 7:30, precisely. I heard her command the head chef and the butler. When Mr. Whitmore stands, you will bring in the champagne, and you, she pointed a finger at the butler, will follow with the legacy box. Place it on the credenza, open, with the pens. He is signing the quarterly papers tonight. It must be seamless. The legacy box, the large, embossed leather portfolio that held the family's financial soul. It contained the trust disbursements, the quarterly allowance authorizations, and, most critically, The power of attorney documents. Marina was planning a public execution. She intended to have my grandfather sign over his financial kingdom to her in front of a room full of witnesses, using the soft pressure of a holiday celebration to ensure his compliance. While Marina managed the logistics of her coup, Aunt Ruth was handling the information warfare. She was in the grand drawing room, holding court by the massive, roaring fireplace. Guests were arriving. Old money neighbors in pearls, distant cousins smelling of expensive perfume. Ruth, holding a glass of sherry, was weaving her narrative. I entered the room in time to hear the tail end of her whisper to Mrs. Vanderbilt. "Absolutely terrible. I know," Ruth was saying, her voice dripping with false sympathy. "She arrived with so much baggage. We have heard she has massive credit card debt, tens of thousands. She's been flagged by multiple agencies." Mrs. Vanderbilt's eyes, heavy with judgment, flickered to me as I entered. "It just breaks your heart," Ruth continued, dabbing at a dry eye, "to see someone so desperate they would take advantage of their own grandfather. Elias is just too generous, which is why Marina has to be so protective of him. She bears the burden, you know." It was a classic smear campaign. They had failed to frame me as an impulsive thief with the wine, so they were pivoting. Now, I was a desperate debtor. They were meticulously constructing a motive for why I would steal the $1 million check, a motive they could present to Elias after the fact. I nodded politely to Mrs. Vanderbilt, who offered me a thin, pitying smile, and moved to the bar to get a seltzer. The jury pool was being poisoned. The most pathetic display, however, came from Dylan. He found me standing by the window, my briefcase at my feet. He was trying to look casual, but he was vibrating with a manic, rat-like energy. His face was pale, and he was sweating in the air-conditioned room. He knew his wire transfer had not just failed. It had been logged. He was cornered. "Hey, London," he said, forcing a smile. "Crazy day, huh? Listen, I just got the new wrap on my car. It is this insane matte black. You have to see it." I looked at him, my expression blank. "I am fine right here. Dylan? No, come on. Just for a second. It is right out front. I want to show you." He was insistent, his eyes darting toward the door. I realized this was not about his car. It was a ham-fisted attempt to get me alone, to get me away from the house, away from my briefcase, away from the audience. "Fine," I said. I picked up my briefcase. His eyes twitched, annoyed that I was bringing it, but he led the way onto the circular drive. The valets, already busy, watched us. Dylan's gaudy sports car was parked off to the side. "See?" he said, gesturing. "Sick, right?" "It is gray. Dylan." "It is matte black," he snapped, his composure cracking. He recovered, forcing another grin. "Whatever. Hey, you know what? I think I left my wallet in your car." "Did you drive?" He was probing, trying to find my assets. "I took a car service," I lied. My rental was safely anonymous in the guest garage. "Oh, right." He was thinking, and I could practically smell the smoke. "Well, what about that big coat? The wool one you had? It is cold out here. Did you leave it in the house?" He was fishing. He was looking for the physical check. He knew the scan was a bust. He must have finally, correctly, deduced that the paper he and Marina had stolen was a decoy. He was desperate to find the real one, to destroy it, or perhaps to use it as a bargaining chip. "My coat is upstairs. Dylan, what do you really want?" The fake friendliness evaporated. His eyes were wild. "Listen, London, that check, it was a test, right? I know it was. I was testing the system, for grandfather, to show him the security flaws." The lie was so pathetic, so transparent. A $25,000 security flaw. "Dylan?" His face went ashen. He knew I knew everything. "I was going to put it back," he hissed, grabbing my arm. "The system is it is locked. You have to help me. If you just give me the real check, I can fix this. I can show him it is all safe." You have to help me fix this before the toast. The asset is secure. Dylan, I said, pulling my arm free. As it was ordered to be. You are not going to help me? After all this? You are going to let them crucify me? Your choices are your own, I said, my voice flat. I turned and walked back into the warmth of the house, leaving him standing in the cold. A child realizing the game was over. I had maintained a placid, calm face. He had just delivered a full confession. As I re-entered the drawing room, the doorbell rang. Marina, ever the hostess, swept to the door. "Attention, Langford and Mr. Atherton," she gushed, her voice a symphony of surprised delight. "I had no idea you were joining us for Thanksgiving." Elias insisted, Langford said smoothly, handing his coat to the butler. He was in a dark, impeccable suit, carrying a thin leather portfolio that looked identical to Marina's legacy box. Mr. Atherton, the president of Harbor Mutual, nodded gravely. "A kind invitation. We are just here to wish the family well, and as you know, finalize some year-end documents with Elias." Of course. Marina was beaming. She thought they were here for her. She believed they were the official witnesses to her coronation, the legal force who would notarize the documents in her box. The irony was so thick it was suffocating. Atherton and Langford both caught my eye across the room. Langford gave me a single, infinitesimal nod. Atherton's face was a perfect professional mask. The executioners had arrived, and the hostess had just welcomed them in. At 6:30, Elias made his entrance. The ambient chatter of the party stopped. He leaned on his ebony cane, his presence filling the room. "Welcome, friends," he said, his voice a low, clear rumble. "I am grateful for your presence. As you all know, we have a tradition in this house. No screens, no distractions. Tonight, we will be present with one another." He signaled. A butler began to circulate with a large velvet-lined silver tray. "Please," Elias said, "deposit your phones. They will be secure in my study until the evening is over." It was his tradition, but tonight, it was a masterful strategic maneuver. I saw the panic flash in Dylan's eyes. He was cut off. Gage looked annoyed, unable to check his stocks. Marina and Aunt Ruth, however, handed their phones over with a theatrical flourish, performing their loyalty. I handed over my personal phone. My secure work phone remained in my briefcase, powered off. Langford and Atherton also dutifully deposited their phones, playing their roles as neutral guests. The room was now an analog island. No one could call for help. No one could text a lawyer. No one could transfer funds. We were locked in. As the butler moved away, Gage sidled up to me, a glass of champagne already in his hand. "Smart move, sis," he whispered, nodding toward Langford and Atherton. "Bringing in the big guns, but it is too late." "What is, Gage?" He leaned in, his breath hot with alcohol and self-satisfaction. "I heard what happened. The wine, the check. You are trying to make a mess to get his attention. But the deal is done. After the toast, we all sign the quarterly disbursements. And Marina, she gets full power of attorney. Elias already agreed. Langford is just here to stamp it." He genuinely believed I had lost. He was breaking the news to me. "Better luck next quarter," he said, patting my shoulder in a gesture of condescending pity. He walked away, just as Marina was giving her final instructions to the head of service. "And serve the Margot," I heard her say. "The 1982, the new one. It will be a celebration." She was going to flaunt it. She was going to serve the very bottle that was the replacement for the one she had just fraudulently claimed as stolen. I walked over. My briefcase was in my hand. "Marina," I said, my voice quiet but clear. The butler and Marina both froze. "London, not now. I am busy with the guests." "You cannot serve that bottle." Her eyes narrowed to slits. "Excuse me?" "The 1982 Chateau Margaux," I said, keeping my voice level, "is currently the subject of an active insurance fraud investigation, which you filed this morning at 8:15 a.m. Serving it would be tantamount to destroying evidence. It is a legal liability for the estate. The butler went pale. He knew I was not guessing. "How dare you?" she hissed, her voice a venomous whisper. The guests were mingling, just out of earshot, but they were watching. "I am merely protecting the estate, as per procedure," I continued. "That bottle must be secured as evidence. I have a lead-sealed evidence container in my briefcase." I tapped the case. "We can tag and seal it right now, if you prefer, or you can put it back in the cellar and serve the 1995, and we can avoid disrupting the guests." Her face was a mask of pure, unadulterated hatred. She was trapped. If she served the wine, she admitted to the fraud. If she argued with me, she would create the very scene she was desperate to avoid. She looked at the smiling, oblivious guests. She looked at me. "Fine," she spat, the word barely audible. Her smile snapped back into place. She turned to the butler. "A last-minute change, the 1995. It pairs far better with the amuse-bouche." She straightened her silk dress, a perfect, graceful hostess, and glided away to charm her guests. The last skirmish was over. I had taken her final piece off the board. The stage was set. The grand dining room was silent, save for the clinking of silver and the rustle of starched linen. Every guest, every cousin, every old-money neighbor was seated. The air was thick with the scent of roasted thyme, rosemary, and the underlying, metallic tang of fear. The doors from the kitchen swung open. 2 servers, moving with practiced solemnity, entered. Between them, on a massive silver platter, was the turkey. It was a perfect burnished gold, a centerpiece worthy of a magazine, surrounded by roasted root vegetables and herbs. It was placed directly in front of my grandfather, Elias. He did not reach for the carving knife. He picked up his ebony cane. He tapped it, once, on the thick Persian rug. The sound was a dull, heavy thud. The room, which had been murmuring, fell completely, deathly silent. Elias looked down the long, magnificent table. His eyes were not festive. They were the eyes of a chairman about to liquidate a failing division. "We are here," he began, his voice a low, clear rumble that carried to every corner of the room. "For Thanksgiving, a day to express our gratitude." He paused, his gaze sweeping over Marina, then Dylan, then Ruth. "But before we give thanks," he said, "we must give truth." A collective, sharp intake of breath. The guests looked at each other, confused, then intrigued. This was not on the program. Marina's forced smile was frozen on her face, a rictus of terror. "Attorney Langford," Elias said, "if you would." Attorney Langford, who had been seated quietly near the end of the table, stood. He was holding the thin leather portfolio he had brought. He opened it. "Mr. Whitmore," Langford said, his voice the formal, dry tone of a courtroom. "As requested, I have the executed 5th codicil to your last will and testament. It was signed and witnessed 2 months ago." Marina's head snapped toward him. This was not her legacy box. This was this codicil, Langford continued. "Outlines a fiduciary integrity test. I will not read the entire document, but I will summarize the binding clause. It states that any beneficiary who attempts to improperly access, convert, or otherwise tamper with the designated test instrument, in this case, check serial number 4490, is immediately and irrevocably disqualified from all distributions, principal and interest, from the Whitmore Family Trust." The word irrevocably landed on the table like a slab of granite. "It is a trap," Aunt Ruth shrieked, her voice cracking. "A setup." "A trap, Ms. Whitmore," Langford replied, not looking at her. "Only catches those who reach for the bait." He turned to the other man. "Mr. Atherton?" Mr. Atherton, the president of Harbor Mutual, stood. He, too, was holding a document. "As the bank of record," Atherton said, his voice heavy with institutional gravity, "we were tasked with monitoring the test instrument. At 1:17 a.m. this morning, our systems logged a breach." "A lie!" Marina shouted. half rising from her chair. "She has had the check. She has been trying to frame us. Our systems logged an unauthorized digital scan." Atherton continued, his voice rising, cutting her off. "The scan was not of the check itself, which our systems show remains uncached, but of a high-resolution, pixel-fingerprinted decoy image." He held up the printout. It was the bank's official log. "The scan was initiated by a device registered on the estate's private network. The device ID is Marina Scan Pro. We have the receipt. It was purchased by you, Mrs. Whitmore, 3 weeks ago." Marina's face was white. "I have no idea what that is. You are planting evidence. London is behind this." "Am I?" I spoke for the first time. My voice was quiet, but it cut through her panic. I placed my own briefcase on the table and opened it. I took out my laptop. I had bypassed the no screens rule because I was not a guest. I was an auditor. I turned the laptop around for the table to see. "This is the bait image I created," I said. "The one with the pixel fingerprint that Mr. Atherton just referenced. I received an email last night from a John Barrows asking for this scan. That email, as our logs show, was opened on only one device before the bank's alarm was triggered. It was opened on your iPad. Marina." I clicked. The screen showed the email header, the routing data, and the device ID of her tablet. "You are a hacker," she screamed. "This is illegal." "It is called steganography, Marina," I said, "and it is perfectly legal when used to protect a private asset. But you did not just open the email. You came to my room." I clicked again. The screen changed. It was a video file. Date stamped at 1:16 a.m. The view was from the bookshelf in my room. Looking at the desk, the image was grainy, lit only by the green banker's lamp, but the silhouette was unmistakable. "That," I said, as the figure of my half-brother, Dylan, crept into view, "is not me." The video showed Dylan, holding his portable scanner, frantically searching the desk. He was looking for the decoy I had left, I explained, to the silent, horrified room, which he could not find, because his mother had already entered my room 2 minutes prior, at 1:14 a.m., and stolen it. Dylan stared at the screen, his mouth open, his skin a shade of gray. "That is not all," I said. I tapped another key. "This is the bank log from 1:22 a.m., 4 minutes after Dylan was in my room. It is a failed wire transfer for $25,000, an attempt to move money from the family escrow account to an LLC. The name of that LLC," I looked at Dylan, "is Reef Now." Gage, sitting next to Dylan, actually recoiled, pushing his chair away from his cousin. "This is slander," Marina shrieked, finding her voice. "We are being attacked. That wine? She attacked me about the wine, too." "Ah, yes, the wine," I said. I pulled my phone from my briefcase, my work phone, which I had never surrendered. "You are right. We should clear that up." I tapped the screen and hit the speakerphone icon. A pre-recorded message began to play, the automated voice of the insurance company. "Thank you for calling the High Value Asset Division. Your claim, number 881B, filed at 8:15 a.m., has been reviewed. This claim is denied." Marina's eyes widened. A new voice, a live recording of the fraud investigator I had spoken to, came on the line. "Mrs. Whitmore, this is Agent Davies. As we informed you, your claim for the lost 1982 Margot is denied. Our records show a duplicate purchase of the exact same bottle, same vintage, same serial number, made by your household account 6 days ago. We consider this an active attempt at insurance fraud. All your policies are now frozen, and this matter is being referred to our legal department." I stopped the recording. The silence in the room was absolute. It was the sound of a dynasty collapsing. The guests, the neighbors, the family. They were all frozen, staring. Aunt Ruth, her face purple, finally broke. "A trap!" she screamed, her voice a raw, ugly sound. "It was all a setup. You did this. London, you came here to destroy us." Langford, who had remained standing, looked at her with a calm, cold pity. "Mrs. Whitmore," he said, "I will say this one more time. A trap implies no choice. This family was presented with a moral and legal test. They failed it. They were not forced to break into Ms. Jacobson's room. They were not forced to scan the decoy. They were not forced to attempt wire fraud. And they were certainly not forced to commit insurance fraud. They did so willingly." He looked at the rest of the table. "My grandfather," I said, "is a builder. He built this family. He built an empire. He despises rot, and he wanted to know where the rot was." My grandfather, Elias, who had not moved, who had watched this entire proceeding like a spectator at an opera, finally spoke. He placed his hands on the table. "Does anyone else," he asked, his voice a low, gravelly query, "have anything to say?" The silence was his answer. Mrs. Vanderbilt was staring at her plate. Gage looked like he was going to be physically ill. Aunt Ruth was breathing in ragged, choked sobs. And then, Dylan. He slumped forward. He was not a man. He was a spoiled, terrified child. He put his head in his hands, and a broken sound came from his throat. I just wanted to show him," he whispered, his voice cracking, tears streaming between his fingers. "I just wanted to prove I could handle the money, that Reef now could work. I was going to put it back. I swear. I was going to put it back." His confession, pathetic and small, hung in the air. Marina did not look at her son. She did not look at me. Her face had gone from white-hot rage to a glacial, terrifying cold. All the calculation, all the ambition, had shattered. She was left with nothing but the stark reality of her failure. She turned, slowly, to the only person who mattered. She turned to my grandfather. Her expression crumpled. The coldness vanished, replaced by a desperate, fawning plea. "Elias," she whispered. "Elias, please. You cannot let her do this. It was a mistake, a misunderstanding. These are your children, your family. You cannot let this outsider, destroy what we have built." She was pleading, she was begging, not for forgiveness, but for a restoration of the rules. My grandfather just looked at her. His face was carved from stone. "It is not she who has done this, Marina," he said. "It is you." Marina's plea hung in the air, a desperate, failing echo in the suddenly cavernous dining room. The guests, the Vanderbilts, the cousins, the neighbors, stared at their plates, at the cold turkey, at anything but the raw, exposed nerves of the family. Elias did not look at Marina. He looked at the centerpiece, the uneaten, perfect turkey. "The Whitmore Trust," he finally said, his voice quiet, yet it silenced the room, "was built on a single premise: to provide security for this family, to build a foundation. I have spent the last 20 years watching you all treat that foundation not as a floor to stand on, but as a trough to feed from." He turned his gaze on Marina. "You talk about building something. You have built nothing. You are a maintenance manager, and you have allowed rot to set in." "Elias, that is not fair," Aunt Ruth cried, her voice trembling. "Fair?" Elias's voice was like ice. "Fair is earning what you have. I gave you all comfort, and in return, you developed entitlement. That ends," he signaled to Langford. "The fifth codicil," Elias announced to the table, "did not just set a test, it enacted a new charter. The Whitmore Trust is, as of this evening, formally restructured. It is no longer an entitlement trust. It is a responsibility trust. Any beneficiary who commits an act of ethical or legal malfeasance, who acts against the integrity of the family or the holdings, is subject to immediate and total disqualification. The test was merely the mechanism. The result is permanent." "You cannot prove it!" Marina shrieked, her voice regaining its acidic edge. "This is all her. London. She planted that decoy. She probably switched the real check. How do we know the one she has is even real? It is all a performance. The accusation landed. The guests murmured. It was a plausible defense. Elias looked at me. London, the asset. I did not reach for my laptop. I reached into my briefcase and pulled out the small, sealed tungsten box. I placed it on the table. The triangular seal, number 71 Delta, was bright blue and perfectly intact. The asset, sir, I said. Seal unbroken, witnessed by Marta Costa and Judge Quinn. Elias nodded. He looked at Langford, who produced a small, sharp blade from his portfolio, the kind used for opening sealed documents. With a single, fluid motion, Elias sliced the polymer seal. He opened the box. He reached inside and pulled out the official, bank-issued, tamper-evident envelope. He tore it open. From it, he slid the real check. It looked identical to the printout I had made, but it was heavier, crisper. You say she faked it, Elias said to Marina. He held the check up. Mr. Atherton, if you would. Atherton stood. He produced a small jeweler's loop from his pocket. He leaned in, examining the check in Elias's hand. He focused on the bottom right corner. This is the genuine instrument, serial 4490. Atherton confirmed, his voice booming with authority. The microprint is correct, the watermark. Whitmore Family Holdings, escrow trigger, is embedded in the paper fiber. This instrument is authentic, and it has not been tampered with. Elias then took the printout from my laptop, the one Dylan had scanned. He held them side by side. She did not switch the checks, Marina, Elias said. She knew you would come for it. She left you a copy you stole, a copy you scanned, a copy you used to commit wire fraud. Her integrity is intact. Yours is in ruins. The room was silent. Elias put the real check down. He turned to Langford. The documents. Langford slid a single, heavy piece of vellum across the table. It was not the legacy box Marina had prepared. It was a legal authorization. Elias took his fountain pen, uncapped it, and signed his name with a sharp, definitive stroke. What is that? Marina demanded, her voice rising. What are you signing? You are correct about one thing. Marina, Elias said, capping his pen. The trust needs a manager. As of this moment, your status as trustee is formally revoked. You cannot. I can, Elias said, and I have Mr. Langford. Please explain. Langford stood. The fifth codicil contained a conditional removal clause, tied directly to the fiduciary integrity test. By attempting to convert the asset and by filing a fraudulent insurance claim against the estate, you, Marina Whitmore, have violated your fiduciary duty. Your removal is automatic. Then who? She whispered, horrified. Gage? Elias shook his head. I am appointing London Jacobson as temporary successor trustee, effective immediately. He slid the document to me. I read the terms. This is an emergency authorization. Langford clarified for the table. Ms. Jacobson has been granted temporary power of attorney over all trust assets for a period of 48 hours to manage this crisis. Elias looked at me. His eyes were not warm. They were heavy. Your job, London, is not to punish. It is to restore. You will stop the legal bleeding. You will contact the insurance company and withdraw the fraudulent claim. You will stabilize the bank accounts. You will ensure that not $1 of this family's public-facing assets is lost. You will restore our legal honor. Do you accept? I looked at the document. This was not a reward. It was a battlefield promotion. I accept. You cannot! Marina screamed. Standing up so fast her chair screeched on the floor. This is my family, my house. You cannot just hand it to her. Mrs. Whitmore, Mr. Atherton said, his voice a cold steel wall. Please sit down. All documentation, including the conditional removal clause and the line of succession, was filed with Harbor Mutual, reviewed by our legal counsel, and notarized 60 days ago. This is not a discussion. It is a notification, as of 5 minutes ago, when Mr. Whitmore signed this order. Ms. Jacobson is the sole signatory on all primary trust accounts. You have no more authority." Aunt Ruth began to sob, a low, wretched sound. "Elias, Elias, you cannot do this to me. Not after everything. I raised your daughter. I cared for your sainted wife. This trust. It is my compensation. You owe me this." Before Elias could speak, Langford stepped forward, opening a different folder. "Ms. Whitmore, regarding compensation, we reviewed your file on August 5th, 2010. You met with our firm to discuss this very matter. You signed a full and final release of all claims against the estate in exchange for a one-time tax-free payment of $800,000 and the deed to the Harbor Heights South property, free and clear. Your compensation was paid in full, 15 years ago. We have the signed release right here. Shall I read it aloud?" Aunt Ruth looked as if she had been struck. The fight drained out of her, leaving a pale, sagging mask. She sank back into her chair, utterly defeated. The only one left was Dylan. He was still crying, but he looked up, his face a ruin of tears and panic. "Grandfather, please," he choked out. I know I messed up. I know it. I was stupid, but I will fix it. I promise. I will get it back. Just give me a chance, please." Elias stared at him, his expression unreadable. He did not answer. He turned his head and looked at me. It was my first test as trustee. I looked at my half-brother. "You attempted to commit wire fraud, Dylan." "It was a mistake," he yelled. "I panicked." "You have one option," I said, my voice cold and procedural. "This is not a negotiation. It is the only path forward. First, you will repay the $25,000, not from the trust, from your own assets. You will sell that car you are so proud of. You will liquidate your Reef Now LLC. The full amount will be returned to the escrow account by close of business on Tuesday." I cannot," he stammered. "The money, it is tied up." "Then you will find it," I said. "Second, you will undergo a mandatory 6-month probationary period. A third-party forensic accountant, appointed by me, will have full, unrestricted access to all your finances. You will have zero access to any trust funds during this period. You will get a real job. You will submit pay stubs to Mr. Langford's office. If you comply, we may discuss probation. If you fail, I will submit my full file, including your videotaped confession, to the U.S. Attorney's Office." Dylan looked past me, his eyes wide, pleading with Elias. "Grandfather?" Elias leaned forward. He spoke, his voice so low only Dylan and I could hear it. "Money can fix a mistake, Dylan," he whispered. "It cannot fix a habit. You have a habit of taking. This is your only chance to learn how to earn. Choose." Dylan stared, horrified, then nodded. A spastic, terrified movement. I stood up. I looked at the rest of the table, at Gage, who had been completely silent, pale as a ghost, realizing his quarterly paycheck was gone, at Ruth, who was staring at her empty wine glass, at Marina, who was trembling with a rage so profound it was physical. "As temporary trustee," I announced, my voice filling the room, "and effective immediately, I am freezing all discretionary spending, all household accounts, all personal credit lines, all stipends, are suspended." "What?" Gage yelped, finally finding his voice. "You cannot! The quarterly disbursement, that is our money." "There is no disbursement," I said, "not until I have completed a full internal investigation of the last 12 months of expenditures. Mr. Atherton, please confirm." Atherton nodded gravely. "The accounts are locked. As of this moment, all credit lines tied to the trust have been suspended." The atmosphere in the room changed. The shock, the shame, the horror. It all burned away. In its place, a new, unified wave of pure, unadulterated hatred. and it was all directed at me. "You, bitch," Marina hissed, her voice a low snarl. "You have destroyed this family," Gage shouted, rising from his chair. "This is theft," Ruth accused. The guests were frozen, witnesses to a complete and total implosion. I did not flinch. "This is not a punishment," I said, my voice ringing out over their anger. "It is a cleanup. The contracts are already running. The new charter is in effect." I looked at the cold, forgotten turkey in the center of the table. "The holiday," I said, "is over." The dining room was no longer a place of celebration. It was a holding cell. The guests, horrified, embarrassed, but too fascinated to leave, were silent witnesses. My announcement of the asset freeze had pushed the family past shame and straight into open warfare. Marina was the first to act. She stalked from the dining room into the foyer, not bothering to lower her voice. We all heard her. She was not calling from her own phone, which was still locked in the study, but from the house landline, a forgotten antique on a mahogany table. She was calling her personal lawyer. "Get here now, Stephen," she snarled into the receiver. "He is trying to strip me. He is handing the entire trust to her. I want the codicil voided. I want her power of attorney revoked. I want them sanctioned. I do not care what it costs. Burn it to the ground." Adonai. Langford did not even look up from his papers. He simply waited. The rest of us sat in the suffocating silence. Listening to Marina's half of the frantic conversation, there was a long pause. "What do you mean, no contest?" Marina's voice was suddenly sharp with a new kind of fear. We heard her lawyer's voice, tinny and distant, through the phone. "Stephen, that is ridiculous," she shouted. "He cannot." "He would not. Are you telling me if I challenge this, I lose everything? Even the house? Even my stipend?" Another pause. Marina was silent. "Find a loophole," she finally whispered, her voice defeated. "Find one. Now." She slammed the phone down. The sound of her, broken and desperate, was worse than the screaming. Langford looked at me and gave a small, procedural nod. The no contest clause, standard in all of Elias's documents, was ironclad. To challenge the will was to forfeit any and all provision, even that which was not in dispute. She was legally paralyzed. Gage, however, was from a different generation. He did not believe in lawyers. He believed in leverage. He had seen his quarterly allowance, his entire lifeblood, frozen. While Marina was on the phone, he had risen from the table, unnoticed, and slipped out the side terrace door. My work phone, still in my briefcase, buzzed. It was a notification from a media alert service I subscribed to, monitoring the Whitmore name. A new post had just gone live on a local gossip blog, the kind that fed on the scraps of Harbor Heights society. The headline read, "Thanksgiving Takedown. Elias Whitmore's estranged granddaughter seizes family fortune in hostile coup." I read the first few lines, a lurid, anonymous insider account of a vicious, premeditated attack by me. London Jacobson, a known corporate raider, against her beloved and ailing grandfather, Gage. He had run outside, retrieved a hidden phone, and leaked his version of the story. He was trying to create public pressure. He was trying to paint me as an elder abuser. I stood up. "Excuse me." I walked, not running, to the study. I bypassed the tray of locked guest phones and went straight to Elias's desk. I used my new credentials to log into the estate's official server. I pulled up the press contact list. I drafted a formal statement. It was cold, precise, and devoid of emotion. For immediate release, this evening, the Whitmore Family Trust, under the direction of Elias Whitmore, enacted a planned internal audit. The audit revealed several significant financial irregularities and unauthorized transfer attempts, necessitating an emergency restructuring. To manage this transition, Elias Whitmore has appointed London Jacobson as temporary successor trustee. The family is cooperating fully to resolve these internal matters swiftly. All other reports are unsubstantiated and false. I sent it, with a copy of my temporary power of attorney attached. to the Associated Press, the Wall Street Journal, and the Providence Journal. I did not send it to the gossip blog. You do not argue with rats. You simply fumigate the house by turning on the lights. Gage's pathetic leak was just neutralized by a formal, unified legal front. By morning, he would not be an insider, he would be a source of false reports. When I returned to the dining room, the power dynamic had shifted again. Langford had used my absence to process the next defendant. He had placed a single document in front of Dylan, who was still pale and trembling. "This is a recovery commitment. Mr. Jacobson," Langford was explaining, his voice firm but not unkind. "It outlines the terms Ms. Jacobson dictated, the sale of your vehicle, the liquidation of your LLC, the 6-month probationary period, and most importantly, your full confession to the attempted wire transfer, and your agreement to cooperate in exchange for our not referring this to the district attorney." Dylan picked up the pen, his hand shaking so badly he could barely hold it. He looked at Elias. "Grandfather?" Elias just stared at him. "Sign it, Dylan. It is the last gift I will ever give you." Dylan bent over the paper and scribbled his name. He had just signed away his car, his company, and his freedom. But he had, for now, saved himself from prison. Mr. Atherton, the bank president, notarized the signature with a heavy stamp. It was done. Only Aunt Ruth was left. She had been watching this all unfold, her mind clearly, visibly calculating. She saw Marina neutralized by the no contest clause. She saw Dylan neutered by his own confession. She saw Gage's media play fail before it even began. So she tried the one tactic she had left: blackmail. She leaned forward, her voice a conspiratorial, slimy whisper. "London, dear," she said, trying to sound like a co-conspirator. "This has all been so unpleasant, so much drama. And it is not over. The press," she said, her eyes glittering. "The gossip. It will be terrible for Elias. For the family name." She paused, letting her offer hang in the air. On the other hand," she continued, "am very good at managing the family's reputation. I can quiet things. I can speak to the right people. I can be your ally in this." "And what is your price, Ruth?" I asked, my voice flat. "Just unfreeze my accounts," she whispered. "My quarterly stipend. Let it continue, and I will be your staunchest defender. I will make sure the world sees you as the savior, not the usurper. We can manage this, together." I looked at her. She was trying to bargain her silence in exchange for continued access. I did not answer her. I reached into my briefcase, into the manila folder that held the evidence. I pulled out a different set of documents. Not from last night. These were from 3 years ago. "Are you offering to be a public defender, Ruth? That is interesting, because I have here the withdrawal statements from the Harbor Heights Historical Society Charity Fund, the one you manage on behalf of the trust." Ruth's painted-on smile froze. "I have the statements," I continued, showing a series of undocumented cash withdrawals, 12 of them, totaling just over $92,000, all signed by you, and I have the corresponding bank statements from your personal account in the Cayman Islands. $92,000 minus fees, deposited 48 hours later. I fanned the papers out on the table. "You have been embezzling from this family, and from a public charity. For 3 years. You were not satisfied with your massive stipend. You were not satisfied with the free house. You were stealing. So no. Ruth, I do not think you want to talk to the press. I do not think you want to be my ally. I think you want to sit very, very quietly and pray that I do not add your file to the one I am preparing for the IRS." Ruth made a small, strangled sound, like a dying bird. She recoiled from the bank statements as if they were snakes. She was done. One by one, the pillars of the family had crumbled. The room was a graveyard. The guests were statues. And then, Marina. She had returned from the foyer, her face a pale, terrifying mask of absolute rage. She had heard her lawyer. She knew she was beaten. She knew she was trapped. She walked, not to her chair, but around the table. She walked until she was standing directly behind me. I did not turn. I could feel the heat of her hatred on the back of my neck. "You," she hissed, her voice low and shaking. "You did this. You planned this. You came here, and you ruined Thanksgiving." I turned my chair, slowly, to face her. "No, Marina," I said, my voice just as quiet, just as cold. "I did not ruin Thanksgiving. I ruined the camouflage. You were all hiding, in plain sight. You, a con artist, controlling the family purse. Dylan, a fraud, siphoning money for sham companies. Ruth, a common thief, embezzling from charities. Gage, a parasite, leaking lies to the press. You were not a family. You were a criminal conspiracy, dressed in cashmere. I did not destroy anything. I just stopped the masquerade." "Elias!" she shrieked, turning to him. "Are you going to let her speak to me this way? After all I have done?" My grandfather, who had been watching this all with a profound, terrible sadness, finally looked at her. "I used to be afraid," he said, his voice soft, reflective. "I was afraid she would come home. I was afraid she was, too. Sharp, too honest. I was afraid she would upset the balance. I was afraid she would, as you say, ruin dinner." He looked at me, and for the first time, I saw not a chairman, but a grandfather. "I was wrong," he said, his voice full of regret. "She did not come here to ruin the meal. She came here to save the entire table from poisoning itself. That broke her. The validation, the final, absolute transfer of power, not just of money, but of love, of respect. It was too much." With a raw, animalistic scream, Marina lunged. She did not lunge at me. She lunged at the table, at the one thing that had started it all. She lunged for the real $1 million check, still lying by Elias's plate. "It is mine!" she screamed, her manicured nails clawing at the mahogany. She never reached it. Two men, the servers who had been standing silently by the wall, moved. They were not servers. They were private security, hired by Langford. One man intercepted her arm, blocking her reach with a professional, solid move. The other stepped between her and Elias. "Mrs. Whitmore," the first man said, his voice calm but absolute. "Please step away from the table." The guests gasped. This was no longer a family fight. This was a physical intervention. Mrs. Vanderbilt let out a small, terrified squeak. Marina froze, her arm still held. She looked at the man's impassive face. She looked at the horrified guests. She looked at Elias. And she knew, in that instant, she had not just lost the trust, she had lost her entire world. Mr. Atherton, the bank president, stood. He looked at Langford. He gave one sharp nod. "Let the record show," Langford said into the dead silence, "that Marina Whitmore, having been notified of the codicil, has now attempted to physically and forcibly seize the test instrument. The final disqualification clause is triggered." It was over. Every appeal, every loophole, was gone. I looked at the wreckage. Marina, held by a security guard. Dylan, weeping into his hands. Ruth, staring into space. Gage, gone. The guests, trapped. And me, sitting at the head of the table, with a 48-hour power of attorney and a family in absolute ruins. The entire operation was balanced on a knife edge. If I enforced the letter of the law, I would send 2 of them to jail and leave the rest destitute. The Whitmore name would be toxic, the trust dismantled by lawsuits. But if I showed mercy, if I tried to manage this, I would be shouldering the burden of their corruption for the rest of my life. My grandfather had given me the power, but he had not given me an answer. The security guard released Marina's arm. She stumbled back, her breath ragged, her face a mask of defeat. The immediate physical threat was over. The strategic one had just begun. The guests, horrified, embarrassed, but too fascinated to leave, were silent witnesses. I looked at Langford. The guests should be excused. Elias nodded. Our apologies, he rumbled to the room. Dinner is postponed. Thank you for coming. They fled. Mrs. Vanderbilt practically ran. In 90 seconds, the room was empty, save for the family, what was left of it, Attorney Langford, Mr. Atherton, and the 2 security men, who now stood impassively by the main doors. I walked to the head of the table. I took my manila folder and from it, I pulled 3 plain white envelopes. I placed them side by side on the table, facing the wreckage of the family. I looked at Ruth, then Dylan, then Marina. My 48-hour mandate has begun, I said. My priority is to stop the legal hemorrhaging, but my grandfather's new charter requires a path forward. These are your only options. I tapped the first envelope. This is refund. You repay what you have taken, and you will be allowed to remain in the family. But with zero access to the trust, I tapped the second. This is reform. You submit to the terms of a probationary recovery. You work. You are audited. You prove you are no longer a liability. If you succeed, you may be reconsidered for limited, future benefits. I tapped the third. And this is resign. You walk away tonight, you sign a full release, a non-disclosure agreement, and you vanish. In exchange, the trust will not pursue criminal charges, and you will be given a one-time final severance. Choose. Before you choose, I continued, understand the alternative. I pulled out the timeline I had printed. My 90-day plan begins now. Phase 1. A team of independent forensic accountants, hired by me, will audit every trust account, every household expense, and every external holding for the last 3 years. Gage, who had apparently slipped back in during the chaos, made a small, choked sound. I had almost forgotten him. Phase 2, I said. I will be contacting the insurance company to formally withdraw Marina's fraudulent claim, citing internal error, and make restitution for the administrative costs. Phase 3. All high-risk real estate assets, which Gage has been managing, will be frozen, pending immediate liquidation. We are moving all assets from speculation to stabilization. Marina laughed. It was a terrible, dry, cracking sound. A severance? She sneered. You think you can buy me off? I am Marina Whitmore. This is my house. She turned her back on me, on Elias, on all of it. I am leaving, and I am taking this to every judge in the state. She stormed toward the door. Stop her, Langford said, not to the security, but to his assistant, who was holding a notary stamp. Mrs. Whitmore, Langford called out. Marina paused, her hand on the door handle. I must advise you, as I believe your own lawyer did, that this trust is governed by a strict no-contest clause. By leaving this room, by refusing to engage in the trustee's recovery plan, you are formally rejecting the will. This is a legal resignation. I do not care about your clauses, she spat. Then let the record show, Langford said, his voice loud and clear, that at 7:49 p.m., Marina Whitmore has refused mediation and triggered the no-contest forfeiture. The notary stamped a document. Elias spoke. Marina, she stopped, her back still to him. You have chosen resign, he said. Your severance is 0. The house is trust property. The cars are trust property. Security will escort you to your room to pack a single bag. You will be off the premises in 1 hour. Elias, you cannot, she whispered, turning, her face a canvas of pure shock. I can, he said. He looked at Langford and signed the final document on the table. Her portion of the trust, as stipulated in the new charter, is forfeit. Mr. Langford, see that her entire inheritance is immediately redirected. Transfer it to the new Whitmore Community Scholarship Fund for the children of Harbor Heights. The security guards moved toward her. She looked at them, then at Elias, her eyes wide with a new, final, cold terror. She had not just lost. She had been erased. She said nothing else. She just walked out, flanked by the guards. The room was heavy. Dylan was sobbing. Ruth was rocking back and forth, staring at the envelopes. "Dylan," I said. He looked up, his face destroyed. "Reform," he choked out. "I choose reform. I will do the work. I will sell the car. I promise." I slid the document Langford had already prepared back to him. "This is the addendum. My probationary terms. You will repay the $25,000. You will also report for 12 weeks of unpaid community service at the harbor table. The soup kitchen Marina always refused to fund. You will work in the kitchen. Starting Monday, 8 a.m., non-negotiable." He nodded, his hand shaking, and signed his name again. I turned to Ruth. "Well?" Ruth looked at the resign envelope. "The severance. How much?" "0, I said. "You already took yours. Remember? $92,000, plus interest. You choose resign, and my next call is to the IRS. Her face went pale. "Refund. I choose refund. I will pay it back." "The $92,000. Good," I said. "But there is a condition." Langford slid her a paper. "Section 12, he read. "The South Bay house you live in is trust property. Loaned to you for life. That loan was contingent on ethical conduct. You have voided it. The trust is reclaiming the property." "No," she gasped. "My home. You cannot." "You can keep it," I said. "If you sign a full confession of the embezzlement and sign a lien against the property for the full amount, you will repay the $92,000 with interest over 24 months. If you miss a single payment, the house is seized and sold. The proceeds will go to the historical society you stole from." She looked at the paper. She looked at the door Marina had just been forced through. She grabbed the pen and signed. It was over. The room was quiet. Langford and Atherton were gathering their papers. The notary was stamping the confessions of Dylan and Ruth. I walked to my briefcase. I took out the sealed, UV-marked, tamper-evident envelope, the real one. I walked to Mr. Atherton. "Mr. Atherton, for the record, please confirm the integrity of this asset." He took it. He examined the seal, the one witnessed by Judge Quinn. He held the small UV light over it. The unbroken cobalt line glowed. "The asset is secure," he announced. "The seal is intact. This envelope was never opened." I turned and placed the sealed envelope on the table, in front of my grandfather. "Your property, sir. My task is complete." Elias looked at the envelope. He looked at the ruined table. He looked at his broken, remaining family. He picked up his wineglass. "Mr. Langford, Mr. Atherton, we did not have our toast." He raised the glass. "To the truth, it is rarely comfortable, and it is never timely. But it is the only thing worth having. I am thankful for the truth." He drank. He put the glass down and looked at me. "Your 48-hour mandate is too short. This is not a cleanup. It is a rebuild. Mr. Langford, the final document." Langford placed one last paper before him. "I am appointing you permanent successor trustee, London, effective immediately." He signed his name. Marina, who was being led past the dining room door by security at that very moment, saw it. "You have signed a death sentence, Elias," she screamed from the hall. "You have sentenced this entire family." I looked at her, my face calm. "He did not sentence anyone. Marina, he just held up a mirror, and he finally made you sign the names that were already written on the back." Her wail cut off as the front door closed. Elias looked at me. The room was still. He picked up the real $1 million check, the one I had just returned to him. He took his pen. He turned the check over, laid it flat on the mahogany table, and endorsed it. He signed the back. Then, he pushed it across the table, back to me. "This is not a reward. London," he said, his voice heavy. "It is not an inheritance. It is not a gift." He slid it toward my hand. "It is responsibility. It is the operating budget for your new job. Go and clean my house." He picked up the silver carving knife. He looked at the cold, perfect turkey. He made the first cut. The sound of the steel blade hitting the wooden platter echoed in the silent room. It was the sound of a gavel. It was the sound of a judgment. Finally rendered, Thanksgiving was not ruined. It was simply, finally, true. Thank you all so much for listening to this story. I would love to connect with you. Please comment below and let me know where you are listening from and what you thought of Marina's downfall. Please subscribe to Lila Revenge Stories and like this video. And if you want to support us, even more, hit that hype button so this story can be heard by more people.